day because there's not much else going on. So, the two videos I made this morning, I wasn't trying to create a sense of despondency. I'm actually an optimist, I really am, but I'm a realist. I see things with a clarity, but I also try to examine things from all points of view. I'm always trying to catch myself to make sure I'm not a slave to orthodoxy or dogma. And all my life I've practiced that. I've always tried to see things from both the different sides, the hanged man and the tarot. And the Burkean magazine a few years ago said that Thomas Sheridan has an almost supernatural ability to get people to change their viewpoints or consider things from different angles. And yeah, I think that's I'm not blowing, I'm not being big-headed here, but I think that's a lot of truth to that. I think I've done that a lot during the years. Not forcefully, I've often done it with humor, and I've always tried to make people have a holistic approach to everything. So therefore, that they can not be led into traps themselves and not be damaged by impulsive, poor decision making, because that's really what causes a lot of problems in the world. And so, someone said to me, "Is there any hope for Europe?" You see, this is a difficult question to answer. On one hand, I think that Islam will become a very dominant force, within the next 20 years within Europe. England is already the Albion Caliphate. King Charles is definitely converted, and Starmer literally was worshipping Muslims recently during Ramadan. Now he's an NPC robot. There's nothing inside that thing. That thing is not even human. Like Keir Starmer's not even a human being. There's nothing in there. He's an empty vessel that's been programmed in the Bolshevik manner to just receive information and carry it out. Uh, they, I think, yeah, absolutely. It's going to be very bad in some places. It's going to be very, very bad particularly in the north of England and places like Birmingham in the Midlands and parts of London. And it won't just be like British whites who will be fleeing. It'll be British who are not immigrants who are not of Muslim background. I was reading something recently that large numbers of Jamaicans who have emigrated to Britain have emigrated back to Jamaica because of the Islamic thing. So, we'll all be in danger. Don't be surprised one day in the next 20 years if you have fishing boats coming across the Irish Sea with people from Manchester and Preston and Blackpool and Birmingham seeking refuge from what's going on in England. In the future, it'll be mirror what's going on in Syria right now. Someone said the left and Islam are not the same. The left and Islam are identical. Look how they're fawning over this genocidal jihadist lunatic in Syria, the left. Look how the left do everything. They pass all the laws. The hate speech law in Ireland was designed to protect. It was the first role of the Sharia law in Ireland. But the lefties will never be prosecuted underneath it because they can attack Jews all they want here. They're part of the protected caste for now. What's the best case scenario? The Slavic world comes to our rescue. That more and more Europeans start to realize that Putin is not the monster he's made out to be, and the Russians are. Even though Russia has a huge Islamic population, and they have had problems with like ISIS and stuff, they've kept it under check. There's never going to be Islamic laws, Sharia law passed either locally or nationally within Russia. The Slavs are not like that. So it's like Rudolf Steiner said: the Slavic people have yet to rise up and come of age. So there's the possibility of Slavic people, Poles. The Slavs are a far, as things presently stand, the Slavs are the most superior people in Europe. They're like the Poles, the Hungarians and Magyars, we'll include them as well, and many of the other Eastern Europeans, including the Russians, the Belarusians, and all them. They're all vastly superior in intellect and culture to the Western Europeans right now. So that's a hope, okay? That Hungary can throw. Look, I mean, to show you how invasive this thing is, look what's happened in Romania. They basically cancelled an election because they don't like someone who loves Romania more than Sharia. This is what goes on. I tell you something, if I lived in somewhere like the north of England, somewhere like Bradford, or not even Birmingham or parts of London, and I had grandkids, I'd be desperately worried for their future. Maybe, I think you're going to have a lot of people who convert to Islam just to stay alive, temporarily. Uh, because this is how Islam is. It doesn't, I mean, when I was growing up, our teachers told us the greatest load of bullshit about the Moorish Caliphate and how the Moors and Moorish Spain and Iberia was a great place of learning and intolerance and science. And then I started to read books written by actual Iberians, Portuguese and Spanish, and it was absolute hell on earth if you were a Christian or a Jew. Mass crucifixions regularly took place. The sultans took thousands of Portuguese and Spanish women as their concubines and kept them in gigantic brothels. This is the kind of thing that went on. The Ottomans were the same. The Ottomans loved to tell you it was wonderful and all this stuff. It wasn't. It was horrible. The Ottomans are directly responsible for the Palestinian horror that we have that's wrecking Europe today, because that was the Trojan horse that finally led to Islamic Sharia Europe, the European Europa Caliphate. I think countries like Germany will, you're going to see a fragmentation. Okay, so see, it's a tricky one. You're going to have parts of Britain demanding being separatists. Okay, so you may have like a caliphate in the Midlands of England and the north of England breaking away. But what will happen is the majority of Muslims, most Muslims are lazy fuckers in this part of the world. When was the last time you saw a Muslim on a building site? All they do is, work-wise, they have their fucking, their Turkish barber shops and taxi driving, sitting on their arse all day. They generate their wealth through their multiple wives and children, collecting social welfare. I don't care who's hearing this. I don't care. I'm not lying. This is a fact. Now, I know there's Muslims who work hard, run restaurants and do all this stuff. I'm not talking work in hospitals. I'm not talking about them, okay? I'm talking about a specific type of Muslim welfare tourists who've come into Europe in their absolute millions in recent years and have no intention of contributing to society. I'm not blaming decent Muslims who've worked hard, that have, are settled in this country and are just doing their Muslim. No problem at all with them. We should be very careful. But the problem with Islam is that whenever these horrors take place, like the Bataclan or the Pakistani grooming gangs in England, the decent Muslims say nothing. I can remember well when the IRA bombs went off in England in the 80s, that there used to be like marches in Dublin saying "not in our name." They used to open books of condolences they used to raise up money for the victims in Britain of IRA bombings and stuff like that, civilian bombings. Irish people were deeply ashamed and horrified by what the IRA were doing, and that's why they had no support, especially in the south of Ireland, except by ironically, the same knuckle scrapers who love the Palestinians and Hamas. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that fucking interesting? But yeah, where are the mass movement of Muslims who say, this is terrible, this is not how we want Islam to be seen? They don't appear. Why? Because they're afraid that the radicals will kill them, and that's really what goes on. It's a huge sort of like protection, cultural protection racket. So this is what we're up against. So you'll have a situation where you might have Islamic caliphates break away, but they'll have no wealth because they don't. They're all their fellows who've been living off the dole, most of them, with their 4 wives, 30 children, collecting the social welfare benefits. If they do work, they drive a taxi or have this Turkish barbers, whatever the fuck those things are. God only knows what's going on behind those things. Where you go into small villages and there's 4 Turkish barbers and there's no one in them ever. And who knows what that's about. And I'm sure it's something not very good. But they don't generate wealth in this part of the world. They don't even generate wealth in the Middle East. They need, unless there's oil growing underneath their feet, they can't do nothing. You know, I mean that's just the fact of it. I mean, the Holy Land, Israel, was an absolute wasteland and a desert. The Jews made the desert bloom. The Jews who didn't even have a great history of agriculture turned Israel into an agricultural powerhouse. Well, some guy moved his camels around or his goats around, saying, "This is my land." Why? Because the Turkish were here 200 years ago. So, I'm a firm believer in the whole thing of the land belongs to those who work it. You see, Africa is a classic example of that. The land belongs to those who work it. Once they're not like discriminatory and things like that, and I know there's problems with that in Israel, it has been in the past. Not as bad as many Westerners think there is, but yeah, that did definitely go on. And in South Africa, apartheid and so on. But, so those places will fail. So you'll have a situation where you'll have the Yorkshire Caliphate, the I don't know, the Hanoverian Caliphate in Germany, the Grenoble Caliphate in Belgium and France, where they economically collapse because there's no one making money to pay their social welfare benefits. So what will they do then? Well, they'll attack the countries next door to try and get the stuff off them. So that's, so it's as if that's a dodgy situation. Like, I know it sounds like I'm being very sectarian here, but like I said, I've no problem with these decent Muslims we have in the West. But we need them to speak up. Like when when a Muslim beheaded 2 gay men here a couple of years ago, it became a festival of Irish men are homophobic, and isn't Islam wonderful? That all has. This is they're at the left again. The left and Islam are that. They're that for now. But as soon as Islam takes control, it'll be like the Bolsheviks in Russia. They'll kill all the useful idiots first against the wall. Well, first to have their heads chopped off will be I'm an intersectional feminist who supports gays for Palestine. They'll be the first to get their heads chopped off. It's always like that. They're just useful idiots for now. So, that's one hope, that the Slavic world rises and invades Europe. I really do believe that. I mean, I know it sounds crazy, but the way things are going with the Islamification of Western Europe, that's really all we have left. Also, another thing would be MAGA. If MAGA could somehow get but it doesn't look like it. Look what happened in Germany. All the women went out and voted for the parties who are allowing them to be raped by grooming gangs. I mean, this is the reality of it. So if you see how MAGA is in America, the Muslims are afraid of Trump. In fact, remember that meeting before he was elected of the local Muslims in Michigan? They were basically begging him to not hurt us. And there's fuck all Muslims in his cabinet because he knows what he's dealing with. Yeah. They put any group that puts its religion before its, and that includes Christians and all the other fundamentals of any kind, before their nation is extremely dangerous. Before their culture is extremely dangerous. I think Europe has a lot of suffering to do. I really do. And all I can say is that I'm a firm believer in that you get the reality you want. Now, I'll give you an example. COVID. During the COVID, we, the tribe, were thrown into this prison, this big pharma Pfizer prison, police state with everyone else. But through our tribal mindset and the ability to communicate amongst one another in this thing, we managed to avoid everything. Sure, we had to deal with all the restrictions, but we found we were giving each other tips how to get around it. But more than anything else, we stood steadfastly together saying, mandatory COVID vax is the hill we die on. They're not injecting us. And we went to all kinds of levels to do that. The whole thing was just wait. Just wait and hold that steadfast belief. And guess what? We came out the other side with the same DNA we were born with. And I can tell you, my friends, the tribe, that is no mean feat what we accomplished. Because that psyop was absolutely phenomenally toxic. Everything was guided towards that. And just by us communicating like this, we saved ourselves. Because we knew we weren't alone. Well, the same applies to the future. We have a toxic AI cesspool that's coming, coupled on the sort of like technological, social, cultural level, and on the societal level. We have, I'm talking about Europe now. America's saved. MAGA has saved America. I know it doesn't, and that's but it has. It has saved America. Europe is in a dangerous place. All I can say is that we just wait again. We just hold out and wait for it to come back around again. Because if I know one thing about Islam, it's doomed. And I'll tell you why Islam is doomed. Islam believes it's God's final word on earth. That all the religions that came before Islam were just stepping stones to the final thing, which is the Quran. And the Quran states that Muslims are the ultimate chosen people, and they will inherit paradise on this earth. And most Muslim countries are absolute shitholes if they haven't got oil underneath them. And Islam, and are a very unhappy people, just going by how angry they always seem to be. So they look around the countries around them that are not Muslim countries. Now, there are exceptions to the rule. There are Muslim countries that do function a lot better than others. But predominantly, I'm talking about the Arabic world. But look at Africa, the Muslim countries there. They look and they see non-Muslim countries doing way better than they'll ever do. And this makes them furious and angry. They will never articulate it on the surface that the Quran lied to us, but that's what's going on. And rather than face the fact that maybe their religion has let them down and it's time for an Islamic Reformation, like we had the Protestant Reformation, to re-examine our religion, they'd rather chop off the head of the person who said it, or stone them to death, or imprison them, or cut their hands off, because they have a visceral, immature mindset that's not capable of real wisdom, for the most part. I'm sure there's plenty that are. This is the problem with Islam. Islam is told that it is the ultimate religion, and people who are Muslims will be the kings of this earth. And, they're shitting in the streets all over the world. They're in dire poverty. They don't even like each other. They attack each other every chance they get. And they look around at Europe and North America and the Anglosphere, and they see how come these predominantly Christian countries, and Israel as well, Jews, how they are doing so much better than us. And then they deep down inside go, well, God doesn't favor us. And so that's where all the anger comes from. That's where all the resentment comes from. That's not going to last forever. Especially if they get their caliphates or their caliphate dependencies, and it economically collapses really fast, and it will, because unless they have oil underneath, they can't do nothing. You will have a situation where half of them will want to attack the English traditional English native country next door, or the young people will say, I can't deal with this, it's bullshit. And that's quite possible, because a lot of Islam has been only really radicalized in the last 30 years. And the Americans and NATO bombing the shit out of the Middle East played a huge part in that. In that resentment. And that's also the reason why they're all here in Europe. All that, and also the pro-Palestinian crowd. They wheeled the Trojan horse into Europe. Now, this, if you look at Islam up until the 1970s, it was fairly moderate. Even in Islamic countries, there was you didn't have this sort of intense Sharia mentality. It didn't really exist. There seems to have been more of an Arabic takeover of Islam. If you had Bosnian Muslims and they were the kind of the driving force of Islam, you'd have a very different Islam. That we have Arabic. Basically, we're dealing with an Arabic business model that's not working anymore and tries to save itself by constant expansion, rather than reorganizing or restructuring itself through a reformation. See, the thing was the oil wars starting in the 70s, when King Fads shut off the oil wells and started the Arab oil embargo. It made many Western countries very resentful towards the Islamic world, particularly the Arabic world. So when NATO started to go to war in the Middle East, it made them it made dehumanizing the Arabs and the Muslims very easy. So it created radicalization everywhere, not just in Afghanistan, not just in Iran, everywhere. Muslims became radicalized, especially after they suffered a colossal defeat in the '67 war. That was a massive humiliation for them. 40 Arab nations and groups got together with the express purpose of wiping Israel, the Jews and the Christians and the Druze living there, off the face of the earth. And the Israeli Defense Forces handed them their arses on a plate. And it was, again, the Quran wasn't supposed to happen according to the Quran. And that also made them insane. They're not very good at winning wars, Arabs. And that's another thing. If the Slavic world rose up, the best hope would be, is what I'm saying, is just wait, to stay positive. In Ireland here, and in your country as well, I've made a point of worshipping Ireland. I've made a religion of this landscape, of this culture, of this land. And so that pours energy into it and makes it powerful. Mother Eru. This is why I don't like distractions like the Burks, who take our focus off Ireland and towards Jesus. Because a Middle Eastern thing, an Arab. And that's the way. That, keep faith in the long-term picture. And know that Western civilization is the most spectacular achievement of the human race. And be thankful that you're part of it. And know that you're inheriting a legacy that began with Greece and Rome. The Greek and Roman pain. And stay away from assholes like Jordan Peterson, who says that Western civilization, I can't stand that asshole. I saw him the other day going, Western civilization is just a result of Middle East. Fuck off. Greece and Rome had nothing to do with the Middle East. And neither had the Protestant Reformation, you asshole. But he is a fucking asshole, that Jordan Peterson. And yeah. And you inherited that. And that belongs to all Europeans, not just people of Italian or Greek. That filtered out to all of us. That came to all of us through the Grail mysteries, the Arthurian legends. It all came through in some way or another. Through the stories of knights and right through to things like the Tolkien stuff. That's a legacy that cannot be broken because that's rooted in a physical landscape and not just an esoteric idea that's rooted on a belief that a slaver, a slaving pedophile from Medina 1500, 1600 years ago created a business model called Islam. We have something tremendously powerful. And it was just like, just wait during the COVID thing. I knew we had something powerful inside us that all there. You just think of that propaganda machine. It's hard to believe. And now the people that tried to enslave us, like Fauci and everything, they're the scum of the earth now. Other than a few lunatics, they have no one who actually stands up for them anymore. There's Bobby Kennedy in Washington D.C. What did that come from? It didn't. Well, I didn't vote in the American elections because I don't live there, and many of you don't either. It came from a steadfast belief that we were right. So hold that in your heart and just wait. And I guarantee you the solution will manifest for us, just like it manifested with us with the needlecraft and sanguine gnosis. It will come. But the important thing is to not break, to not give up, to realize that there is hope. Hope. Do you remember during the the whole COVID thing, everyone was saying, "Where's the hope?" It's not arriving. It did arrive. It was you. Take care and enjoy your weekend and the nice weather.